Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Time for this week's edition of State of the Program. State of the Program brought to you by Adam Lowy. We'd like to thank Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm for their sponsorship of On Texas Football. If you've been injured in a car, truck, automobile accident of any kind, from an 18-wheeler to an ATV, and think you might be due compensation, then reach out to Adam Lowy at thelowylawfirm.com. Adam and his group will give you a free, no-strings-attached consultation. Again, that's lowylawfirm.com. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and start with this. Sark has talked a lot. We've heard a lot from Sark the last couple of weeks, whether it was in Atlanta at ACC Media Days, the THSCA convention. A lot of stuff coming out about the newcomers, the guys that got here in early June, be that the high school guys or the transfers. So what are the expectations? What are the expectations we have for these guys? And Gerry, I'll start with you. And the group really seems to be Jack Endries at tight end, and we'll throw Nick Townsen in there as well.
Yeah.
Emmett Mosely at wide receiver and Murad Watson at defensive tackle. Maybe with the exception of Nick Townsen, since he's a true freshman. It sounds like the staff, the internal expectations are that those three guys are basically like all SEC caliber players for Texas right out of the gate. Do you think those are fair expectations?
Yeah, I don't know who's going to start at defensive line, so how that rotation looks. But Murad Watson's a starter-level player. He's a freshman All-American, and he was on a team which game planned for him when he was at Syracuse because he was the best interior guy they have. I don't think there's any question Endries and Emmett Mosely are starting next year if they're healthy. What happens with Murad Watson? Because Cole Brevard, I think, is the over-the-ball player. Then you have Alex January coming on. But, look, you have to have four solid guys in that rotation. I think they're all starter-level players out of the portal, and it wouldn't surprise me if Murad Watson didn't even win a starting job. I think he's done that well, and I think the staff thinks that highly of him.
CJ, you in the same boat?
Yeah, I think so. The big question for me, I guess the outlier is, what does a Lavon Johnson provide for you coming in from Maryland? You talk about having a starter caliber guy, but you need those 4th and 5th guys on your defensive line. Texas obviously got to see that a year ago when it was Bill Norton making big time 4th down stops. Could a Lavon Johnson be a guy like that in situational roles? We'll see. But moving forward, I think you really like what you've heard so far about an Emmett Mosely, about a Jack Endries, 2 guys that have stood out since basically the minute that they stepped on campus. And that's encouraging considering the depth at wide receiver and the hole that was needed to be filled at tight end. And yes, I do think Jordan Washington will eventually be a very good tight end, but we've seen tight end be a position where you need 1, 2, maybe even 3 years to fully grasp that spot in this offense.
Gerry, going back to CJ's point real quick, this is why you brought Murad Watson in out of the portal. It increases your margin for error, where if you look at that other group, look, I think we can all agree your top 3 guys at some point in that defensive tackle rotation are going to be Murad Watson, Cole Brevard, Alex January. At some point, I think it's going to be that. But from that other group, between Lavon Johnson, Hero Canoe, Travis Shaw, you really only need one of those guys to step up. And then if you get anything from Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma in year 1, Gerry, that's just the gravy on top. The deeper we get into it, as good as Jack Endries may or may not be, I think Murad Watson might be the move that wins Texas more football games this year.
Yeah, and I think the move in the portal at D-line, I agree with you. I think – and the great thing about Murad Watson, he'll be a 2-year player before he heads off to the NFL. That's the great thing about him. But, look, Travis Shaw is going to factor heavily in there. If he's healthy, he's a solid player. Yep. Then you have Hero Canoe. Then you have Lavon Johnson. CJ mentioned him. We'll see where he's at health-wise. Then Texas loves the 2 freshmen, and Melvin Hills is there to compete. They love the 2 freshmen. They may not see much of them this year in games outside of blowouts. But that first 4, and I really believe that Cole Brevard, Murad Watson, Alex January, Travis Shaw, that is a quality 4. Then that depth goes right behind it with Hero Canoe and Lavon Johnson. So I think Texas is in a really good spot. And I've been on record. I think they're actually going to be better this year in different ways than they were last year. I think they were better disruptors last year. I think this year they're going to play the run better. I mean, Murad Watson's a monster against the run. So's Cole Brevard. So's Travis Shaw. I mean, those are 3 run stuffers. I mean, Texas legitimately could have got 3 guys that are similar to Jermaine Lole production against the run.
Yeah. CJ, I want to go back to offense real quick. And look, I'm on record and I will stand by it. I'll die on the hill that the red zone fade needs to be fired into the sun. But Jack Endries and Emmett Mosely, knowing what they both can do, these guys can potentially help your red zone problems and help your offense when the field compresses. What are you expecting? Where are you expecting the most help to come from in terms of what Jack Endries and Emmett Mosely are going to bring to the table?
Well, aside from Archer's legs in the red zone, look, I think the over the middle is going to be where you see a lot of passing success in the red zone. I know it's tough, right? The field condenses, that middle of the field gets much hairier, but aside from a few comebacks, a few whip routes, Texas didn't really have much success outside of waggles, right? Getting Quinn out of the pocket a year ago, throwing a ball to the front or the back pylon. Obviously, Matthew Golden had a number of great catches, one against Michigan. You saw the one-handed catch against Vanderbilt. Isaiah Bond had a big one early in the year where his face was basically ripped off. But aside from that, because that gets pretty predictive, right? Folks know that, okay, Texas is in the red zone. If they can't find a way to punch it in via the ground, they're going to have to roll out. I think that a Jack Endries over the middle of the field or even a DeAndre Moore, right? I think what he was able to do in the slot fade is where you'll start to see a lot more success in the red area when that field condenses. It's all about precision. And yes, Quinn was good in those areas, but I think that fastball of Arch will certainly help in those condensed red zone trips.
Gerry, to that end, when you look at the offense and the weapons Texas has added through the portal, is this not just more proof that, hey, whatever happens with the 2026 recruiting cycle down the stretch, if there is a need, if they feel like they need to get a tight end or a wide receiver, you don't really need to break the bank for a high school guy. You can just wait to get in the portal, because if Emmett Mosely plays out like the way Sark is making it sound, it sounds like they're going to hit another home run in the portal at wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think obviously that has caused some of Texas planning at high school receiver, what they were going to do and didn't do in this high school, in this 26 class. I think you're right on point. And again, look, here's the reality. Ryan Wingo's got 2 years left at Texas. Emmett Mosely's got 2 years left at Texas. DeAndre Moore, if he has a great year, probably could go pro. Then you have the freshmen behind him who they like, all these guys. So there's multiple years of guys here. And Parker Livingston, redshirt freshman as well, along with the true freshman. So there's multiple years here with this wide receiver core. So I think that took away a need a little bit in the high school class when Sark looked at it. He got good players, don't get me wrong, but they weren't going to go break the bank, if that's the term, for a high school wide receiver when they really like what they have on campus, and they could all be back. I mean, if DeAndre Moore doesn't go pro after this year, the whole group's back for another year unless somebody transfers. That's very rare. And then if multiple guys left or something weird happened, you could go to the portal late and fill a need if you have it. I think you're spot on.
Gerry, I want to stay on offense real quick and give you the floor first. Expectations for Nick Townsen. We know he is an incredible athlete. I love the fact that you've now got a veteran presence at tight end. CJ brought up Jordan Washington earlier. I think both these guys, along with Mario Winston, you can now let these guys grow at a steady pace instead of having to force them onto the field before they may or may not be ready. Gerry, what are the realistic expectations for Nick Townsen, especially considering he missed spring ball?
Yeah, that's the key. Is look, pound for pound, he's one of the best athletes in the program. In his testing numbers, everything he's doing at about 240 pounds has been really impressive. He's made plays and what they're 7-on-7 and whatnot. But look, it's going to come. I think he's going to be I could see him being a special teams demon in year one. Because of that height, weight, physicality, speed combo, I could see him being a guy on special teams. I can also see him factoring in as the season moves along at tight end, because the one thing he can give you, if you go to a 2 tight end set, he has real vertical ability, and he is going to draw a favorable defender. So I think that speed. Could he play that H-back role and give you another dimension out of that? He's got the physicality in the run game, but then he could give you a dimension of, sneak this guy out of the backfield, and he's going to race down the sideline, and he's going to have a favorable matchup. I think Nick Townsen will play special teams early. I think as the season moves along, he will become a factor in this offense. He's too talented not. The only way he won't is if the contested catches that he made in high school become drops in college, and he has to have an adjustment against really good players. But if he catches the ball cleanly, and soundly from the get-go, he's too talented of an athlete not to play. As much talent as Texas has. Where do you come out, CJ, on that? I'd be interested, CJ, where do you come out on that one?
It's going to be really interesting to see early in fall camp who's the more physical piece, and how does that continue throughout the season between a Jordan Washington and a Nick Townsen, right? Because I think you still have that contested catch, that big body, that vertical threat ability in a Jordan Washington, but can he be a guy that you throw a 12 personnel on the field and still see bodies being moved, whether it be a double team, whether it be by itself in the run game? That's the big difference for me, right? Texas threw out a Juan Davis last year because I ultimately didn't have another choice. Would that have been their preference if an Amari Nyblack was a guy that got his hands and feet dirty? I don't think so. But to me, who can be the biggest difference maker in the run game? Because I do think that the vertical passing ability will be there for both. The one thing that I think about Washington is he's coming in around 260, 265 pounds. That's a little heavy than maybe I thought, but that's 20 pounds or so on a Nick Townsen, which, again, we'll see how that physicality lines up.
Maybe the best thing I've heard, other than, we've heard great things about the newcomers, but of late, GJ Kinney, when he did his press conference down at the Texas High School Coach Association convention, was asked about Mason Shipley. And guys, when you talk about the Texas kicker, this is verbatim from GJ Kinney, quote, doesn't have the biggest leg, not going to be your kickoff guy or anything like that, but very accurate. I think that's probably what they were looking for, is just consistency and accuracy. I do believe he can do that. Good Lord, Gerry, if Texas gets consistency and accuracy at kicker this year, that could be the difference between you being an SEC champion or not, or being a national champion or not.
Yeah, Mason Shipley will be signing autographs on the right hash if that happens. Look, I mean, the line will be lined up on the right hash for him. But yeah, that's when you have a really talented team. What do you need? Consistency in special teams. That's really what this comes down to: punter and kicker. If you have a really, really talented roster, you need consistency at those positions. No 20-yard punts at the wrong time, putting your defense in the bad position. No missing mid-range right hash kicks with an SEC championship or games on the line that can change the course of your season. Your seeding, which is going to be very important in the future. It's consistency on special teams at punter and kicker when you're really, really talented.
Hey, look, talking about his leg, Texas doesn't need him banging 55, 60-yard field goals. Because you know what Sark loves to do in that area? Go for it on fourth. He likes being aggressive in between the 30 and the 40 right there. That's perfectly fine for me. What you need, though, to your point, Gerry, is you need to be able to make those 35. You need to be able to make those 40-yard field goals from either hash, right? So that's the big key. To hear that, sign me up.
Yeah, I think Mason Shipley, Jack Bowmeister, both, they're like the fire department. Don't want to use them, but when you got to use them, they need to be effective at their job.
By the way, I think in the case of Bowmeister, he has a chance to be an NFL punter. So I think Texas really has something there. A consistent older college punter that has a chance to be a pro.
Guys, I want to move on. One thing I wanted to talk about this week on State of the Program is the state of, let's go ahead and just group them together, the three big rivals Texas has in the SEC: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and since they're on the schedule, might as well throw them in there. Let's include Arkansas. CJ, I'll start with you. I think the big thing is hearing Brent Venables talk at SEC Media Days. It just, look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I've been here, whether it was late era Mac Brown or Charlie Strong or Tom Herman, where it's almost like you're trying to convince yourself that things are going to be different. That's kind of what I hear from Brent Venables. And it seems like Sam Pittman has been dead man walking for about the last 2 or 3 years. It's not going to surprise me, CJ, if we're sitting here next year talking about two of these three rivals that Texas has, and they've got different head coaches.
Well, you look at Venables, and I think he even knows that his power is just being stripped away from him in Norman, right? They bring in Jim Nagy. Jim Nagy, the only general manager that I saw at SEC Media Days, that in of itself is a red flag to go around and say, hey, I know we got the head coach here. It's his program, but we also are going to bring the general manager. So we know that there's a power struggle at the sense of who's recruiting who and which coaches are able to greenlight their recruits. Point being, I think Venables certainly feels the heat. On top of that, going back to becoming the sole defensive play caller this year on the defensive side of the ball, how much of that CEO vibe will he be able to have on the sideline? We know that that's kind of been a give and take for Sarkisian in terms of time management, in terms of being able to go out and orchestrate a play call on the next series. But for Venables, a guy who already feels the pressure, who has a brand new bunch of talent that they need to have offensively, it's going to be interesting because his back is against the wall. There's no doubt about it. And that schedule is not allowing much room to breathe going into the season.
Yeah. I also wanted to say this on Venables. You know when coaches get uncomfortable really is when the AD that hired him leaves.
Yep.
And this is not just the AD that hired him. It's the AD that hired Bob Stoops and the whole regime at Oklahoma. So you have a GM who knows, was he having drinks with Eli Drinkwitz? Dinner with Drinkwitz there? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a few months probably. But a GM who may be your play caller in a way in recruiting and roster-wise. And then the AD that hired you and Bob Stoops is gone. That's a very bad spot to be in as a head coach.
Gerry, I've used the word vulnerable to describe Oklahoma. And really since you go back to the 90s where, Gary Gibbs kind of did the best he could to steward that program through probation and everything that happened in the Barry Switzer's tenure. But the 1 year with Howard Schnellenberger, those 3 forgettable years with John Blake, and Gerry, it's probably not been since then that Oklahoma was this vulnerable as a football program.
I agree. I mean, if you just look, what makes it tough for Oklahoma, guys, from a recruiting perspective, is how important the state of Texas has always been to Oklahoma. But they have an issue now that they have not had in the past. Texas and Texas A&M are in the SEC. So, look, if Elko wins one more game this year and gets the 9 wins, it becomes even tougher. I mean, if you look right now, Oklahoma has Bo Bentley, the quarterback from Salina, committed. Neither A&M or Texas offered him. They have Noah Best, the offensive guard from Midlothian, the FW guys. Neither A&M or Texas made a big move for him. Ryder Mix, the tight end from Lone Star Frisco, the same thing. They got 3 Texas kids committed. They're all DFW. 3 out of 15 in this class are committed from the state of Texas. That is no man's land in recruiting for Oklahoma. They cannot survive at the level they're accustomed to if they only get 20% of their class from the state of Texas. And they got to be able to win some battles against A&M and Texas. If they don't, it's going to be a rough go because that puts too much pressure on them to recruit nationally, and I'm not sure they can play in the sandbox right now.
CJ, I'll let you start on the Aggies. I'm kind of with Gerry. Mike Elko doesn't need to do much to really get that thing on an upward trajectory. Just get them to 9 wins in the regular season. That's a place they haven't been in a minute. My thing with A&M is this, guys. I think Mike Elko is the kind of football coach they need, which is just kind of no frills. It's all about ball. Here's my thing with A&M. It's always been, can they get the culture institutionally figured out, and can they give the guy enough time? Those are the 2 in perpetuity questions about A&M that I don't know the answer to. I don't know if anybody in College Station knows the answers to those 2 questions.
Yeah, I mean, for all the noise folks make about the Texas schedule, look, A&M doesn't play Alabama. They don't play Georgia. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play Tennessee. This is a schedule in theory that should get you to 9 wins just by beating the teams you're supposed to beat, right? And for an A&M team coming into this season, look, they had a great defense a year ago, had to replace a lot up front, but knowing Mike Elko and the way that he's been able to sustain defensive success year in and year out, a top 10 defense shouldn't be out of the picture for Texas A&M. Now, the bigger question is, do you have the right quarterback? Do you have the right coordinator on the offensive side of the ball? That's where my hesitancy has always been with Texas A&M. And quite frankly, I don't think so. So, yes, I do think that they'll be able to compete. And if they win the games they're supposed to, there's a baseline of 7 wins at the very minimum. And then you got some coin flips, right? You got LSU, you got Missouri later in the year. That's going to be really interesting. And, of course, Texas at DKR. Rivalry games, I know Texas felt great after that win last year in Kyle Field. Rivalry games, you never know. But for Elko, there's no reason for this season to be worse than what we saw in 2024. And given your quarterback is coming back, you're supposed to have Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens back in that backfield with a pretty solid offensive line. It's only about how high can that offense take you because that defense will be competitive.
Gerry, I'll let you finish with this. I think we can agree A&M's probably the biggest threat to whether or not Texas gets in the SEC championship game this year of these 3. Oklahoma second. we talk about Arkansas with Sam Pittman. I think they're hurt the most, and Sam Pittman even said it when Texas and Oklahoma got into the league that recruiting the state of Texas was already tough. It's going to be even tougher for them. I just don't know where Arkansas is as a football program, Gerry. And look, I've got an inflated sense of what Arkansas is. Like as a kid, I thought Arkansas was like a top 20-ish program, and really all time they're probably more like top 35, 30. It's hard for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel with Arkansas.
Yeah, well, if John Calipari hadn't gone to the Sweet 16 last year, that fan base would be miserable right now.
They might still be miserable considering how they lost that March Madness and then how they lost in Omaha.
It's been a rough go, but football-wise, they're in a brutal spot from a recruiting standpoint. They have maybe 4 or 5 guys in state a year that they would take. You lose one of those guys to out of state, maybe 2 every year. So maybe you keep 2 or 3. If you're signing 27, 28 guys, man, that is a lot of recruiting left around the country. And where are you going to get guys? Now, this has been Arkansas's problem since the whole SEC move before Texas and Oklahoma joined. You're not going to go to Atlanta and be on the top 10 of many kids' school lists.
Right.
You're not going to go to Florida and be on the top 10 of kids' school lists. So where are you actually going to go to get the players? That is a huge problem because you can't live on the portal. You just can't do it. That's no way to build a program long term. So what's really tough for Arkansas, I don't see a path where they ever truly move up long term. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a really good year or two, right? But truly move up. Like 8 out of 10 years, you're in the top half of the SEC. Does anybody voting on that? Nobody's going to vote on that. They just can't recruit the players needed to.
Yeah.
And if you have some great young coach, he's going to get taken away from you anyways. So they're in a really tough spot from a football perspective. They're in a great spot from a basketball perspective, but they're in a really tough spot from a football perspective.
Just real quick on Arkansas, they have a complete void of playmakers this year. Andrew Armstrong, Isaac Tesla, they're 2 studs from a year ago off to the NFL. And then they go out and they add 7 wide receivers out of the portal this offseason alone. And the guy that they expected to be their number 1, Ishmael Cisse, just broke his wrist and will be out for the year, unfortunately. So who's going to step up? It's great when you return your starting quarterback and a talented one at that with Taylor Green, but it doesn't mean a whole lot when you don't know or you don't have anybody who you can throw the football to.
And what's interesting is Sam Pittman retires right after this year, whatever. Let's just say they offer the job to Jeff Traylor because the AD knows Traylor well. Man, do you take the job? That's a tough question. That's where Arkansas is. The head coach at UTSA once turned down Texas Tech. Do you take Arkansas or do you try to hold out for an Oklahoma State or something if it comes open? That's where Arkansas football's at.
Yeah.
The guys that get the job aren't sure if they would take it.
The other thing, Gerry, the popular answer Arkansas fans have is, well, Rhett Lashley could come back to Arkansas and leave it. Why would Rhett Lashley leave SMU at this point?
No chance. Yeah, he's not doing that. He's at a program in the ACC and he's in DFW. He's beating Arkansas for play.
Exactly.
Why would he go to he goes to Arkansas, SMU hires Traylor, and then he starts losing the same players he was winning. No chance. That's how bad of a spot Arkansas is in.
Yeah. Guys, we'll wrap up with this. When State of the Program gets published next week, it will be on reporting day for the Longhorns. CJ, I'll start with you. Whether it's Sark, the Texas players, Texas opponents, anybody, have you heard anything in the last week to 10 days that's changed your outlook on the 2025 season?
Change my outlook? Probably not. I think I believe this team is very talented. I believe that this team should compete for the SEC championship. And I believe that, hey, you're the heaviest favorite to make a college football playoff position in 2025. That's the expectation, right? The one thing that was brought to my attention, and it's more kind of just a trip down memory lane in terms of what our expectations for Art should be, is what does he look like and what does it sound like he is performing like in practice early on? Is he forcing the ball down the field too often? Is he checking down? Is he going through progressions? Because that's part of what we saw a year ago. Remember, his first interception was a ball that he tried to force. Remember, that game against Georgia, he tried to force a couple balls down the field in which he had guys underneath. And I love that we're going to see more and more deep shots, more success down the field, because that's part of the Sarkisian offense and the magic that might have been missing a few years, under his tenure here in Austin. But for Arch, how much of it is forced? How much of it comes naturally? And is he able to get the ball where it needs to go if that first read isn't readily available? That's what I'm looking forward to. Other than that, that defense alone should be able to get you into a position to make the college football playoff, regardless of who's at quarterback.
Jerry, you get the last word. Anything you've heard in the last week to 10 days has changed your outlook on the season?
Absolutely not. I think it's going to be so interesting because the Ohio State game, what's Arch's level of play in that game? Because it's going to be through the roof build up or total tear down of him. It's the whole thing's being set up that way. You can see it from a million miles away. So nothing on the team. I think what happens in this Ohio State game, week 1, is going to be so interesting to see, because if Texas wins that game, then they're going to have so much media coverage, so much positivity. It's the total build up, the tear down. So that game's going to be fascinating from that standpoint. From a team standpoint, no. Look, Jack Endries doing well, and Mosley's doing well, Murad Watts. I mean, you hear these names and you're like, okay, these guys weren't there for spring practice. If they're impact players, then Texas is going to be really damn good.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up with this, Jerry. And CJ, you can comment on this too. Whether it was whoever's ranking portal classes, nobody thought really highly of the Texas portal class. But we're talking about Bo Meester, Shipley, Endries, Mosley, Watson, throw Brad Spence in there. Jerry, there's going to be a half dozen or more transfers that are starting caliber players on a team that has a really good chance to go win a national championship.
Cole Brevard. I mean, so you're a team that has been recruiting top 5 in the country classes, number 1 class in 25, and yet you're going to get 5 or 6 starters out of the portal. So, yes, the fact that Sark took those guys should tell everybody that they had Texas portal class underranked. Because when you're that talented of a program and you take those guys, the people that rank the portal should probably take that into account a little bit more. It's like the old days when Bill Snyder took a linebacker. You better do a double take. You better go back and reevaluate the player. If Gary Patterson took a small school defensive back, you better watch that tape once again. I think the people are missing it, the portal at rank it.
Yeah, one nugget I'll throw in there as well. Look, we talk about the starters, we talk about the frontline guys. Adding Matthew Caldwell, the quarterback from Troy, that might be just as important as any addition. Should things go wrong, and you hear me knocking on wood there, to have that insurance plan in case. That's huge.
All right, CJ, Jerry, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise. As always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. And thank you to Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm for their sponsorship of On Texas Football and State of the Program. If you've been injured in a car, truck, automobile accident of any kind, from an 18-wheeler to an ATV, and you think you might be due compensation, reach out to Adam Lowy at loweylawfirm.com. Adam and his group will give you a free, no-strings-attached consultation. Again, that's loweylawfirm.com. And thanks to Adam and the Lowy Law Firm for their sponsorship of On Texas Football and State of the Program. If you're not a subscriber at ontexasfootball.com, you're not an OTFOG, it's all right. You can become one right now. Get over to ontexasfootball.com. Use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. Camp is right around the corner. You do not want to miss anything going on. Again, the promo code is OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Also, make sure you like this video and you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. So that way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, we've got you covered for all your Longhorn news, notes, and nuggets. For Matthew, for Jerry, for CJ, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.